My background is really in business. I run an institute in the United States called the Iacocca Institute at Lehigh University. Gordana and the Par Business School is my partner. We've had a number of Croatians now and Serbians that have come to our program. We just finished a few weeks ago. We had 89 people from 42 countries there. It's been running 19 years, so we've been training about 1,800 young business people. A third of them have their own businesses already. They're already out of school. They're more like some of you guys here, probably. A third of them are graduate students, and the other third are undergraduates. My background is really in business. I'll go back a slide here. I was the vice president for sales for AT&T. I started, you probably wouldn't be aware of this, but if you're in the telecom field, AT&T was the largest corporation in the United States, and they decided to break it up. It's unlike a lot of your countries. If you were in Germany and you were Siemens, or if you were in France and you were Alcatel, the government would never break you up. But in America, when you get too big, it's not good. And we were too big. We were 1 million people and controlled the whole market, so the government broke us up. So actually that was a good thing for me, because what happened is they allowed a bunch of us to go overseas into a small group to create businesses all around the world for AT&T. We already had more connections. In fact, today, if you go to the United States, you'll find out that AT&T is about as big as it was when the government broke it up, right? So the government breaks it all up, and if you can get by another 20, 30 years, here it is almost as big as it was when the government broke it up. But we didn't have any direct offices. We had connections in 200 countries, but we didn't have factories and joint ventures and offices. So that was really my job, was to go around the world. I started off in Dublin, Ireland, moved to Rome, Italy for a few years. From Rome, I moved to Melbourne, Australia. From Melbourne to Sydney, set up a sales office. Then I moved to New Zealand. That's actually where I met my wife. So I was on the other side of the world, as far away from America as you can get. And that's where I met the woman that I'm in love with. And married her, brought her back to Italy. We went back to Rome. I had an office in Athens and Greece. And then they sent me to Hong Kong. I spent 5 years living in Hong Kong, opening up 15 Asian countries with operations and joint ventures and so on. And then I finished up living in Amsterdam. And there it was kind of interesting. I thought I was going home, but they decided to send me to Amsterdam, but I never spent any time in Amsterdam at all. I was running the Middle East and Africa and Eastern Europe, places like we did joint ventures in Moscow and Czech Republic and Poland, in a place called Bydgoszcz. And then I went off to Africa to work in South Africa and Ghana and Kenya and Nigeria, then off to Saudi Arabia, and did a joint venture in Abu Dhabi and Dubai and in Cairo. And then I came home. I was a little bit tired. Okay? I don't know if you guys want that kind of a job or not, but it was, I had, nobody in my family has ever, I've had so many miles that nobody in my family for the last 20 years has ever had to buy an air ticket, right? They all travel freely. So, okay, we're not going to talk about that. I'd love to tell you about all that international stuff, but what we're going to talk about, what Conrad and Serjan and Alex asked me to talk about, is investors and angel investors. You guys are working on technology, but at the end of the story, someone's going to actually have to invest in your business and put money into it. And that's kind of the story I want to talk to you about. Now, what I want to do is I want to compare a couple of groups. Okay? I'm an angel investor. What's an angel investor? Do you know what that is? Maybe you have venture capitalists. What's an angel investor?
Investor that invests in
your business, yes. Right?
Yes.
Why are we called angels? Because we're really nice people?
No, because it's all about profit. If you invest in something, you need your money back.
You need your money back. Okay, that's a very interesting point.
Invest for a
But
share.
the
Huh?
angel,
Invest
because
for a share.
Invest for a share, right. Okay, so we're not venture capitalists, are we? An angel investor. I mean, you could say there's, we're going to talk a little bit, I'm going to show you something about some venture capitalists. We're not venture capitalists, we're angel investors, right? Whose money are we investing?
Yours, not the fund.
Right. Mine, not the fund. So this is where it gets a little difficult, especially when you have a conversation with your wife and she says, I want a bigger home, and you say, no, I'm going to take the money that you and I have saved and we're going to invest in a company somewhere. She goes, huh? Pardon me? Which company? Why are you doing that, right? Well, it's a very difficult conversation. I've not been part of this before, about 5 years ago. We started a group in the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania called the Lehigh Valley Investors. There's 30 of us, men and women. They're all different, okay? Some of them are corporate people like myself. Others are young entrepreneurs who have cashed out early. One guy started a security firm and he got very, very big in the security business, putting technology into companies for security. Anyway, he sold out of the business, okay? So now he cashed out for about $5 million. He doesn't really work. It's kind of interesting. He's only 35 years old. All he does is invest in companies, okay? Just as a point, in Pennsylvania, where I come from and teach, there are 13 clubs of investors across that whole state. And this actually is probably what makes America quite different. I was just in San Francisco University, and there were a group of Chilean and Peruvian investors coming in who want to start angel groups. Do you guys have angel groups in Croatia and Serbia? Yeah, there are some?
Serbian angel.
Not, are there a lot or not so many? Probably not so many. Not so many.
They're rare.
Okay, yeah, the last time I was in Rijeka, the government, the mayor, and all those people were talking about starting a local fund in Croatia to invest in companies, okay? So, we're different because it's all our money, right? We're putting all of our money into these companies, and my friend over here in the white said it's for a share of the business, right? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, okay? I'm going to show you the differences between local investors, and I wanted to talk to you about this group. Do any of you know this word, karitsu? Where it comes from? It's Japanese, right. Okay, my friend from, I think he was Vietnamese or Cambodian, the prior professor, he might know this. It is Japanese. It doesn't mean what it, in Japan, a karitsu is kind of the same thing as in Korea, a chaebol, okay? Who are the biggest companies in Korea, as an example? Huh? Samsung is one of the largest, right? What's another one that cars? Hyundai, right? What's another one? Okay. What about LG? Do you know LG?
Yeah.
Okay, what does LG stand for? Life is good, right? No, it doesn't stand for that. That's their advertising campaign. LG stands for Lucky Gold Star. That's the name of the company. Okay. All right. But they're the biggest companies in the whole country. And they pretty much control everything. And what it is it's a collaboration between business, government, and banking to make sure everything goes well. Okay? They have the same thing in Japan. They're called karitsus. In the United States, it might be illegal to actually run it that way, but that's the way they do it anyway. So, I told you that I went out to California. Out in California, in San Francisco, there's a group called the Karitsu Forum. They're the largest single investors in Silicon Valley. You guys are all into technology, so you probably would be interested in this, right? These guys only invest pretty much in technology corporations. There are 3 clubs out there. The biggest one is in downtown San Francisco. And those 3 clubs control 50% of the angel investing that's going on in all the technology firms out there. And of course, Silicon Valley is the headquarters for technology investment in the United States. So, a little bit what I wanted to tell you is that these two groups are very different. The local groups on the East Coast were much softer in the way that we look at companies. The guys out in California are much tougher. They're investing about, in our clubs here, our smallest investment would be about $50,000, okay? We will invest, there's 20 people, right? So we will invest up to $150,000 in a company. Out in California, the investment groups in the Keiretsu Forum, their average startup invent is around $225,000 is kind of where they start. But there are 3 clubs in Northern California, and in San Francisco, and in Southern California. And if you get before the first club, if you're lucky enough to get before the first club, then they will pass you to the second club and to the third club. So it actually works out that they're investing in the end, if you get through passing on their investment, you can get $600,000 from those guys, okay? If you come before our club, we don't charge you anything, right? I mean, you have to make an initial presentation. We bring you in to take a look at your investment, your technology company, if it will be. Out here in California, you have to pay $1,500 just to get before these guys. Because they know that if you get before them, you have a chance for a lot more money, and you could get passed to these other clubs, okay? There's also quite a difference in the psychology behind these two groups of people. We're, as I said, much softer. I'm going to show you that in a second. Let me just use one example. If you're, what's the average age in here? Maybe 25, 30, something like that? A few people older? A few people younger? No? Okay, how many of you are married? Any married? 1, 2, very few, huh?
Almost. Almost married.
Pardon?
Almost married.
Almost,
Next
okay,
year.
right. I can say how many are living together, right? That's probably easier, right? Okay, so they tell me marriage is almost gone here in Europe, right? You guys aren't getting married until much later, okay? So if you're just working through your career and you're in a startup company or you're married, you may be having children, you may be buying a house or an apartment or whatever. No problem. The people that come before our club have gone to school. They're startup people working on startup companies. They're starting to raise a family. They may have invested in a house or whatever. And a number of them are working at night or the weekend to create this entrepreneurial business that they have. That's no problem. We see that all the time. They're trying to balance their lives between family and between going to school and creating a company. But what I saw when I went out to California is these guys out there, they simply don't give a crap about that at all. If you come into their meeting and you're working at the same time that you're trying to create this company, or you're buying a house, they're merciless to those people. They want to know that you're into this all out, right? They don't care. They want to know that your house is mortgaged for the company and that you're working 100% to make this new company successful. And that's what they're looking for. I don't particularly agree with that strategy. I'm just telling you that's where they're at. They're going to invest a lot more money in that company. They want to know that you're all in. And so I noticed that with the people that were coming before this group, they were much tougher, and they wanted to know that you were 100% committed to this thing, and they didn't really care whether you were having a baby or you were getting married or whether or not you you were going to invest in a house, okay? So these are two groups. Local investors on the East Coast, a group of people like myself that are investing our own money. So in a $50,000 first investment, I have $15,000 of my own money in that, okay? As much as maybe $20,000, but I'm not going to invest anything more in that. Whereas these people, you can see I invested a lot more, okay? So I'll just push this over to the side for a second. But those are the two groups. So what Conrad and Sir Jan and Alex asked me to talk to you about is about what do I see as I sat there, I don't know, maybe in the last 3-4 years we've reviewed 60, 70 companies. And what do I see over in California when I sit with this really high-powered group? Because I had a chance to go into their sessions. Are there some comparisons? Are there some things that are similar in both groups? And that's what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about. Okay? Okay. So the first issue that comes on the table when an investor comes before one of these groups, so a young person with a company, is whether or not the guys at the table, the guys and ladies at the table, because there were women in our club also, right? Whether they're going to invest in the horse or the jockey. So what is the horse and what is the jockey? So you're presenting your company to this group of investors. One is the horse and one is the jockey. What do you think it is? Go ahead, Deb.
The horse is the idea and jockey is the man behind the idea.
Okay, so perfect answer. The horse is the idea that you're presenting, and the jockey is the head, generally the senior manager. Or in a bigger company, it's his team. Which one do you think the groups care the most about?
Horse.
The horse. Why the horse? She says the horse. Does everybody say the jockey?
Yeah, I would say
Okay, so how many agree with her? Because it is a debate, okay?
It is, I think, that the both are related to each other. You can't have a people
You can't,
behind the
well, you shouldn't have
that
one.
are not
She's right. You shouldn't have one without the other, right? I mean, you gotta have a good idea in the manager. But when it comes down to the push, to the shove of where they're gonna invest the money, how many of you think it's the horse? The idea? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How about the jockey? Okay, so it's 3 times as many people. And actually, that's the correct answer. Okay? Now, I'm talking about my perception of watching groups who actually give the money, right? I mean, for me, it's always the idea. In the East Coast groups, we're always interested in the idea, that which we think we might be investing in. In the West Coast groups that are used to a lot of really cool new technology out in Silicon Valley, the ideas are always pretty interesting. Okay? Why do they why do they care about the jockey? Why do they care about the actual person leading the company?
Because he must lead this idea. Without him, this idea may go the wrong way.
May go the wrong way, right.
It depends if idea becomes reality.
Right, and a great idea may never become reality unless the team can bring it there, right? So it's not just the leader, it's the team itself, right? So I was out in San Francisco watching, it'll come up a little later, it was a brand new scanner idea, and it was in the copying business. So they wanted to make sure that one of the 3 officers in the company came out of the major copying business, used to be the vice president of sales at Xerox, right? So they figured this guy knows the copying business, he knows where this product can be inserted in the market. So they're merciless if you haven't had much experience in that business, right? And they are investing in the people that are running the company. They think even a mediocre idea might be able to become successful if it's got a good group of people behind it. If the people don't have experience in that particular industry, the investors aren't too interested. On the East Coast, though, we're often very interested in the idea. There's also another big difference. West Coast, East Coast. Carrizo, or the small groups on the East Coast? Do we care how long you're going to be in business? Let's say on the East Coast. If you're going to invest your money, how long do you want this business to go on? Long time? 5
As
years?
long as it gets.
Right, okay. How shorter?
Long.
Long, okay. So from our standpoint on the East Coast, the companies that we invest in, we're not going to get our money back very quickly. We're quite interested in that business going on, as you said, for a long time. In fact, one of my investments is now 7 years in business, right? Every year this business grows. Every year he's acquired, happens to be a business with a kind of a very interesting GPS technology that's in trucks, right? It's in the trucking business. It has to do with the safety on the road, has to do with the best routes, has to do with the maintenance of the trucks, a whole bunch of stuff. They don't make their own GPS, they have somebody else make it, but the software systems are all those. Every year they're acquiring new transportation and trucking companies, and so their base has gone from 500 trucks to 2,000 to 5,000, and really that's all I care about, that their business is going on, and they're acquiring new customers, and their business is getting bigger. Go ahead.
But then the jockey is the idea.
Yeah,
Because
in this case, it was the idea, because we thought that there were other people in this technology, but we thought their software was better and had more attributes, and it was least expensive than some of the big software that was in the business, right? So it was the idea. Now, it happens that one of the guys that runs this company is also from the trucking industry, and the guy that's the head of it is the guy that wrote this software, right? Actually, they were 2 students at our university 10 years ago. They wrote this software together, okay? But yeah, in this case, it was particularly the idea, right? And the fact that one of the guys was in the trucking industry. That's a whole other story, because later on in the development of this business, they were taken over, they hired a South African guy who was extremely good at GPS technology to be the CEO, but he wasn't really a good manager. And he came into the company after we had invested in it, and some of our guys agreed with that, but in the end we had to take him out. Okay, he wasn't really the best guy to lead the group. Okay. All right. So the whole question is here: most of these clubs are going to invest in the people. So if you're going before an investment group and you haven't done this kind of business before, you're not from that industry. And as I said out in California, unless you've got a lot of skin in the game, how much of your own money is invested in this? This is a question that comes up all the time. If they're running another business and they're trying to start this company and none of their money is in this company at all, probably we're not going to invest in it. The people that have got a lot of their own money, I'm thinking of an investment that we actually passed on. There were 3 former bankers. They spent the last year in China trying to convince them of a new system to pay workers on credit cards. Credit cards are not real big in China. A number of the banks are looking at this. But these guys, they mortgaged their homes. For the last year, they've been paying for themselves to go into China to try to create this market for these credit cards to pay workers in China, which is a new concept in China. And these guys are in it all out. I mean, the 3 of them had mortgaged their houses in order to run the business. So other people have been willing to invest in that company because they see that the people are all into the business. Okay, so we've got the jockey and the horse. Okay. Let's see if I can move it here. Okay. The second thing, I'm only going to talk about 4 or 5 things, okay? The second thing is the target market. So if you're making a presentation, someone's making a presentation to you, they're going to talk about the target market. What is the target market for this product?
For
What is
which
the
product?
product?
Potential customers.
Okay, potential customers? Who else? Potential customers for this product?
Competitors.
Huh?
Competitors.
Okay, so you cannot talk about the target, and so, Alex is right. You cannot talk about the potential market unless you talk about the competitors. When I was in the telecom business, if I wanted to go into France, I have to see what part of that market Alcatel controls. Went into Egypt. There's a company there called Orento, which is the big telecom company. They control all the building for any kind of undersea cables, fiber optics, and all the towers. We used to make a lot of money. If I sold $10 million worth of equipment, I could sell another $10 million worth of construction. If I go into Cairo, forget it. That construction part of it is not my job. That's done by the government there. They happen to use military guys. So it's not just the target market, it's called the addressable market. The addressable market is the part of the market that you can actually sell into. So it's actually being able to take that market apart and say, what part of it can you actually get into? You got to Alex's point, you got to take the competitors and move them off to the other side of the ledger because they've already controlling a major part of it. When I was in California, they were this company that'll come up later in a slide was presenting a scanning company. They made a $1,000 scanner for documents. Okay, if they came into the meeting and said that the scanning market for scanning equipment in the United States is $11 billion, which it is, by the way, they're going to throw them out of the room. Right? Why don't they care about the $11 billion scanning market in the United States? That the whole market's $11 billion. Why wouldn't they care about that?
Because it isn't free market.
Huh?
That market isn't free. It is
That
not
market
free.
is not free. Certainly the guys that are presenting this business, right? And so it's don't tell me about how big the market is because you're going to be up against guys like Xerox and all the big copier manufacturers, right? So in that presentation in California, they didn't even talk about the size of that market. The market they talked about, in this particular case, again, it was just their ability to take a look at that market and say, what part can I actually go into?
It's extremely hard to go against the monopoly market.
A monopoly
if
market,
you
right.
don't differentiate your product.
Right.
in what-
Especially with the big guys in the market that are well known and have the brand recognition. So in this case, this particular company said, listen, the only market we're going after are the libraries. Right? You know, what the hell, libraries? Well, there's 250,000 libraries in the United States at that time. And all they're doing right now is scanning documents. They have to scan documents. What they're using are big, Xerox or big copy machines that cost $40,000 to scan all these documents. These guys were presenting a device that was $1,000. Okay, so they only wanted to go to the library market, to the people that are scanning books and documents, and say, I've got a scanner that will scan to the cloud, and the software system that does it, and it only costs $1,000. And they showed a demonstration of that. And that got the attention of the investors in California, because they knew the market, they knew what little piece they were going after it, and they weren't going to compete with the big guys in that market, except that their price profile was $1,000 compared to a $40,000 scanner. So the issue is can you be specific enough? And what this is a trap for a lot of these young people that are starting companies. They're thinking of the size of the big market, and they want to come in and dazzle the investors with the size of the market, and the investors will just basically throw them out because they don't believe that they will ever be able to sell into that market. So you have to be very, very clear about what part of the market you're actually selling to. So that's the target market. That's the second thing. Okay, so this probably is the most important thing so far that I presented to you. And it's called the elevator pitch. So what's an elevator pitch? Have you ever been asked to do an elevator pitch? Have you ever heard that term? Go ahead. What is it?
You have to define your idea in front of guys that are going to invest in it.
Okay, so you have to define your idea, but in what
short
duration?
period of time.
Very short time.
In a very short time. Why do they call it the elevator pitch?
Because it takes time
Yeah,
for the
30
elevator.
seconds, 1 minute.
Yeah, so the idea is if you got into an elevator with somebody, could you, by the time, okay, so a minute, a few seconds, 3-4 seconds per floor, 34 buildings, 25 floor buildings, could you, in 1 minute, convince the people in the elevator that your idea, go ahead,
That your idea is ready to.
that your idea is ready for them to invest in? Would they listen to you, okay? That's the idea. Now, it obviously isn't maybe always a minute, but how many of you, did you ever see the movie Working Girl? You remember that movie from 1988? Okay. It's an old movie, but people watch, I mean, it's Harrison Ford, Melanie Griffith, and Sigourney Weaver, okay? So, someday when you get to if you go to a local video shop, look it up on the internet and get the movie, okay? The reason I mention it is because it's the most perfect example of an elevator pitch. In the movie, Melanie Griffith is a young lady working in an investment firm. She's just a secretary, but she's working at night. And she's smarter than all the investment guys that she's working for. But she's got big haircut, big beehive hair, and nobody will give her any time at all, right? But she's actually smarter than all the people in the firm. Well, anyway, her new boss becomes a woman, and she thinks this woman is going to be a good boss for her. So she's been working on an investment idea involving television and radio, and a company that their company wants to do a major investment with. And she comes up with the whole idea. And of course, you know what I'm going to say. Her boss actually steals it, okay, and presents it to the other company. Typical, right? So she's screwed, and they're going ahead with this major investment, but she's working with Harrison Ford, who falls in love with her, and he knows that it's really her idea, right? Anyway, at the end, towards the end of the movie, all the people, the two companies that are coming together in this big investment, are walking into the lobby of this hotel, this big office building. They're going to go up and sign all the papers involved in this investment. And Harrison Ford picks out the chairman of the company that's making the investment, and he walks up to him as they're going to get into the elevator, and he says, "You know, it's not their idea." And he says, "What do you mean it's not their idea?" He says, "It's her idea." Of course, Melanie Griffith is drop dead gorgeous, and she's standing there by herself, looking very lonely, and the chairman says, "What do you mean it's her idea?" He said, "You got some time? I'll tell you." So he pushes the whole group into the elevator, and the chairman comes out and goes into the other elevator with Melanie Griffith, and he says to her, "You're on, baby. You've got from this floor to the 23rd floor to convince them that it's your idea. It's not their idea." And of course, it's a movie, right? But she does it, okay? So she does it. And it was her idea, and she was the only one that knew the germination of the idea. She's the only one that knew the data behind why this merger made sense. And so she obviously convinces them, and they throw the other guys out of the deal, and they do the deal with her and Harrison Ford. So the point is that all of this work that you would be doing if you have a startup company, and all of the work that these companies are doing, when they come before the investors, it all comes down to this. Now let me show you a difference. In the clubs that I've participated on the East Coast, we give you 20 minutes to explain your whole business. And if you get through that, then we give you another 20 minutes, for questions. Okay? So we're going to spend 40 minutes with you trying to understand your investment. Now, obviously, if we choose you, you're coming back, and we're going to do what's called due diligence, right? I'm sure you have the same thing. We're going to do due diligence on your company. We're going to look at the books. But we've already decided that we're probably going to invest in you. What do you think about the guys on the West Coast? You think they give them 20 minutes?
No.
Okay. Yeah, she's interesting. She said 5. They started out at 5, but what happened is the technology has become so complex that 5 minutes wasn't quite enough. At least by the time I got there, they now give you 10 minutes to explain your business, okay? 10 minutes. Huh? So what happens if you go over the 10?
They don't invest in you.
They don't invest in you.
Because you're not able to set everything
You're
that
not-
you worked on. Then
You're not able to set everything involved in why they should invest in that 10 minutes, right? They actually, it's kind of interesting, and maybe some of these guys were sailors, they have a big ship's bell sitting on a table, and there's this guy with a gong, right? And in 10 minutes, they hit this gong, and it goes, "Mom," and they pull him out, they take him out of the room, right? It's really crazy, right? But there's a point, right? As I told you, you gotta pay $1,500 to get behind these guys. They figure that if you can't explain your business in 10 minutes, they're not gonna give you the money. And then you've got this 10 minutes of questions. I mean, that's the other part of the problem, right? Not only did you not get to stay in the room, but you never got to the question period. How important is the question period? Critical, right? It's critical that these investors ask their questions of you after you've presented your business, right? Like I said, we will stay around with a company for 40 minutes, maybe even an hour. We do 2 of these an evening. When I was with the guys in San Francisco, they do 7 of them in an afternoon. 7 of them in an afternoon, right? So they're going like this, okay? So, at my program in the United States, one of the 2 things that we do all the time, besides working in teams, is getting people to present. I mean, English is not the native language here, except for a few of us, maybe you and I, Alex. Although he's from England, but I don't know. Conrad, you speak German and Polish, Dutch, probably, I don't know. So, but is English a first language for any of you here? No, huh? There, okay, so he's the only one that understands me, right? Do you guys all understand me pretty well? Okay, all right. Because I'm trying to speak pretty distinctly. But it's not your native language, okay? So you're at a disadvantage today. You guys are at an advantage because you're speaking English, and that's become the world's business language, right? So if you can't present clearly in this other language, which is the business language, then you're in trouble. I'm sure you can present in Serbian or Croatian. So in my program, we practice all the time presentations. They're doing presentations on your country. They're doing presentations on the project. We did a project for SenZations company this last summer. A team of mine did. And they have to present in English because it's really critical. And these are primarily native English speakers. But it's amazing how many young entrepreneurs are so deep into the technology or into their company, they don't practice being able to explain it, clearly to a group of people. And they're really missing an opportunity. So this is probably one of the most important, because if you're going to go before a group of investors, if you don't have this down to a complete skill, you're going to be out of it. And they'll toss you out of the room. So that's the third thing. This is so for you guys. Do that, right? All right. So, one of the things that I was going to mention there, Farmville, that was one of the companies I saw presented out in San Francisco. The name of the company they were presenting was called Funium. Do you know about Ancestry.com? Have you ever heard about that? That's the largest ancestry website in the United States. It has 2.4 million users. They're all paying $13 a month to look up your ancestry. They say there's 24 million different paths in this particular site in order to look up your ancestry. As it sits right now, there's close to 100 million names in the site. Interestingly enough, 80% of the people on the site are women between the ages. He says he understood that, because guys, we don't care about our ancestry, right? We don't care where we came from, but the ladies do, right? Anyway, it's a very successful site. And of course, you know the game Farmville. Farmville is one of the biggest electronic games associated on the internet. And what this company was trying to do was putting Farmville, one of the guys was from Farmville, another one of the people worked at Ancestry.com. They wrote a gaming program where people can play games with each other based on their ancestry. So they were using all this interest in the United States on Ancestry.com. Again, 2.2 million users. And they wanted to put it in a game format and rival Farmville. That's what they were presenting out there. So, okay. So the last part of the discussion goes to what, well, my friend here to the right, you mentioned it in the first 2 minutes, right? And that part of it is two things. How you're going to use the money that we're going to give you. And secondly, the second part of it is what's your exit strategy, okay? What is an exit strategy?
Plan B.
Plan B. You always have to have a plan B, right? So what is plan B?
How will I cash out?
How will
I cash out?
How will you cash out, right? Okay. Well, it's not really plan B as much as it is the next step.
If something doesn't go according to plan, how will we exit that situation?
Right. Why do the investors care about the exit strategy? Huh?
They don't want to lose money?
Well, they don't want to lose money, and what does the exit strategy have to do with you making money?
That's how the investors get paid.
It's how the investors get paid.
Yeah,
Right.
points and...
How can you get paid? If you put your money in a company, how are you going to get paid?
Well, either through an acquisition or going public.
Right, so there's only two ways. They're either going to be acquired, and for my money, I own part of that company, right? So when they get acquired, I get a percentage of it. Or, if they're lucky enough to go public, I'm going to get a percentage of the stock, right? There's the only two ways I get paid. Like I told you, I'm in a company now that's still running 7 years. I'm very happy with what that company's done, but have I gotten any money yet? No. No. My wife keeps reminding me, right? All that money I invested, I still have not got paid yet, right? But I keep telling her the company's getting bigger, things are getting better, they're hiring more people. She said, we don't have any of that money back, so I'm still screwed. But eventually, they're either going to get acquired, or they're going to go public, and then I'm going to own part of the company, right?
Or they could pay you out still, right?
Huh?
They could pay you out again, right?
Yeah, they could. They could, but most don't. Because what's the big problem? Cash flow.
Cash flow.
Yeah, cash flow, as you know, is the #1 problem in startup companies. It's always cash flow. Yeah, they could.
After 7 years of the startup, right?
Yeah, it's not really a startup, right? No, he's right. So I only get my money if they cash out, or or they get purchased, and then I can actually get some money out of this deal, right? East Coast, we're perfectly okay to stay with the companies and let them go along and get bigger. What do you think about my friends on the West Coast? Huh?
my money back.
I want my money back. How soon do they want their money back?
Just a few years.
Huh? Well, you gotta be reasonable, right? What did you say? Yeah. Well, they'll wait 2 years, maybe 3. They consider 5 to be terminal. Too long, right? And so here's the reason I'm bringing this up. When we get to the end of the presentation, there are 2 things that they're talking about. I'm going to come back to the other one, how they're going to use the money. But when they get to this part of the conversation, what I saw happening in California, if they didn't have a very clear plan of how in the hell they were getting out of this business, who was going to buy them, when, and why, and did they already have avenues into that business, the investors in California, in the Kritzer Group, were not interested, right? On our side, we're interested in the idea and who's leading it. Is it going to grow? To be honest with you, it's not part of our conversation so much. When are you going to cash out? It's just not part of our psyche. But on the West Coast, absolutely. So if the presenters have done a great job presenting their technology and the money, and they've got great leaders in the company, but they haven't given really a lot of thought to how they're going to get out of the business, boom. They're going to probably eject them from the presentation. Which I don't think is fair, but that's the way they work. Go ahead.
So could you tell us why your group is not that interested in cash out?
Why we're not so interested in it? Yeah. Well, probably the simple reason is that there were very few angel groups in our area. And we're only covering a geographic part of Pennsylvania, trying to spur young entrepreneurs to get into business, okay? So the guys that are in this club, not myself, but a lot of the guys and ladies that are in this club are young, wealthy investors. And they feel that this area has been good to them. They're trying to encourage business in the area, not so much making a lot of money. Okay?
They are really interested.
So there's kind of a, pardon me?
They are really interested.
Yeah. Well, they're more socially conscious, I would say, okay? And they came, you know, they lived in that area, their families are in that area, they're trying to spur young entrepreneurs. The guys on the West Coast are, you know, they're very
You're strict
hardcore.
and you're hobbyist.
Huh?
You're a hobbyist.
Okay, okay, so you're saying it's more of a hobby for
For
us
you?
over there?
But West Coast is like, okay,
This is
now
it.
business.
This is a business. Right.
You maybe sit at the table, have dinner together, and
Yeah,
talk
but-
about they,
At
10
the end of the
minutes.
story, it's a business. Right, they're much hardcore. Yes, you're right. The other part of the conversation is how will you use the money? Some investors come in, and, you know, again, it's like getting every part of the presentation done well. The part of how they will specifically use the money you're giving them, the $200,000, the $300,000, is a critical part of the conversation. A lot of young investors say, well, it's marketing. We're going to hire more salespeople. And of course, that's a dead answer, right? That'll get them killed in the session. If we were looking at a guy who invented an interesting piece of nanotechnology, and he needed that money to get the scale of this piece of technology down small enough where the cost could go into several factories. And he knew exactly what it would cost to get that nanotechnology, was a measuring device actually at the end of the production line. He needed to get it just at a size that would make it advisable to get into the factories. And we knew that that money was going to be used just for that thing, right? The GPS company I told you about, they needed some additional funds, not to sell to trucking companies. This is interesting because I had no idea about this. They wanted to sell the GPS concept to insurance companies. Why would they want to sell a GPS system in trucks, do you think, to an insurance company?
To avoid the insurance fraud.
No, it wasn't for insurance fraud.
Track,
Yeah, I didn't think of this until so late.
track, the monitor.
To track and monitor the trucks from a safety standpoint, from a mechanical standpoint. The insurance companies felt that if their trucking companies that they were going to insure employed this system, that all the numbers that the insurance company tracks would get better. They did, right? So to the insurance companies, they didn't actually buy the GPS. They bought the idea, and we had to have special sales guys that were in the insurance industry. And when they bought the idea, they encouraged their clients. So now it's not this little company in Pennsylvania selling. Who's selling the GPS? The big insurance company is out there selling the GPS to their clients to convince them that if they use this, we will give you what? A lower rate, right? So now everybody starts winning. The insurance company gets clients who are much better in their management of the trucking companies. They use our software, they get a lower rate, okay? So to give them money specifically to get into that industry makes all kinds of sense to us. So we actually gave them an add-on amount of money, okay? Okay, so we've talked about four things. How are we doing on time here? What time do you want to finish?
You have 4 to 5 minutes.
40, I have 45. You don't care. You'll go to the pool if I use a half hour, you'll be gone, right?
West Coast.
To see how much more you can take. 45 minutes. It's a tough crowd. I don't know how they work with you, but it's a tough crowd in here. Okay, so we've talked about four things. We've talked about the horse of the jockey, right? If we go back to all of those, right? And we've talked about knowing where the funds are going to go. We've talked about whether or not you're going to be able to tell me whether or how you're going to cash out. And we've talked about the target market. Okay. So this is actually when I was out in California at the Keiretsu Forum. I wanted to at least give you the numbers there. You can see that they last year they invested in 37 companies, 8.3 million. That's one of the three clubs. Don't forget there's three clubs, okay? So, I mean, if you do that out, I think the math is about $225,000. So again, these are not venture capitalists. These are angel investors, okay? But again, if you pass this first club, you get to the second club, and you get to the third club. So you could parlay, if you look at the average for California, it's closer to 600,000, because that means that the companies that they're investing have gotten three clubs to throw in $225,000, okay? So that's pretty much the average. Now, before I get off of this subject of investing, I was reading Fortune last month, and I thought this might be interesting to you guys in the technology field. The guys who have become really big at ventures, so now these are not angels, okay? This is the next level. These are the venture capitalists. Google Ventures has become, if you've been reading about them, has become one of the big, really moving forward VC groups. And they've got $1.2 billion now in force in companies, in investment. Last year they invested $300 million in startup companies. But if you group together the companies that they're investing in, I don't know why this is, it's not my investment, okay? But, and I coined it Semster. All of their investments are in 6 areas. It's either clean energy, or new forms of education models, probably new forms of online education, right? Or medicine. Okay, there's a lot of stuff going on in the area of medicine, primarily, in investment in new kinds of medicines. Or different forms of shopping online. Or transportation. Okay, so they're really trying to improve the transportation network. Or in robotics. So at this point in time, if you're not in one of these 6 areas, you're not getting before Google for their investor group, and they're investing $300 million a year. I mean, it's interesting. We're invested. I don't think we're in any one of those, but anyway, but those are the ones that they care about. Okay. All right. So. Taking this to the next step, international, I thought I would do just a couple slides on what I did with my business going overseas. If you look at that one slide there, that one slide is practical. I had 25 years with AT&T. I could say that my whole career is on one slide. It shows you why I'm here teaching with you guys, right? If you could put your whole career in one slide. Okay. But if I look back over the 25 years, and I don't know, I guess I did business in 35 countries where I set up operations. They were either sales groups. Most of the time I was buying companies or setting up joint ventures. This is the way that we actually created our business. So, in effect, yeah, I was working for a big company, but it was a startup. I was a startup. Everywhere I went in the world, we were not there. So the first thing we did is we would go in and we would set up a representative office. What's a representative office? What does it look like? Big, small? What do you do?
Small, one
Small.
person owner.
How small?
One person owner.
One person maybe?
Yeah.
One person, maybe 2? When I was in Italia, my title was Direttore Generale da ATT, the Director General of ATT Italia. Complete bullshit. I was no more the Director General of AT&T. But in Italy, you know, there's a thing called bella figura. You have to look good, which means you have to have a good title, right? And a beautiful office somewhere. It was just my wife and I and a dog and one other salesman, right? That was it. But we were in Italy. So we said, what do you do when you're in a representative office? So you said it's only one person, maybe two. What are you doing all day in a rep office?
Searching business contacts.
What?
Business contacts.
Okay, so you're making business contacts. How do you make business contacts? What are you doing?
Walking down the street.
Cold calling.
Walking down the street, getting cars out, right? Cold calling, finding people in the industry, going to associations. You go to a lot of what? Lunches and dinners, right? You spend time with your commercial rep from your commerce department. You've got an embassy or a consulate there. Their job is to help you. So every time I went to a new country, the first person I would go was I'd go over and see the commercial consulate, right, in a U.S. embassy or U.S. commercial office. His job is to try to make it easier for me to do business. He would tell me whether I've got an ethical problem in this country, whether I have to have agents, who are the big guys in the business, and if I'm lucky, he'll start to introduce me to some people, okay? So after we set up a rep office, a lot of times what we did is we didn't sell anything right away. We did consulting projects. So what do you sell when you sell consulting?
Your knowledge.
Yourself, your knowledge is a great business, right? You have no factories, no supply chain. You're just selling your mind, right? Why is it also a good business to do consulting? Who do you get to know when you do consulting?
Customers potentially.
The big guys.
The big guys, the customers, but how do you get to know them? You get to know them from this side, right? Not this side. Because you're not a salesman, right? You're an advisor. You're inside the companies, right?
They need your help.
They need your help. Hopefully you have some kind of expertise. You know, when I was going into these new countries, I was in the telecom field. But I found advisors in water purification. There were all kinds of water purification companies, a lot of these developing countries trying to improve their water. So there were consultants in water purification. There were consultants in bridge and construction projects, right? The good news is when you're a consultant, you're inside the business and you get to know the people from the inside, okay? Then we brought people in, market development people. These people were looking for partners. They were people about your age. They usually worked for investment banks like Salomon Brothers, Morgan Stanley. They came in, they were not salespeople, they simply were looking for the best potential partners. I was out selling, my people were out selling, we were trying to find products to put into, but I wasn't yet ready to buy anybody, I wasn't yet ready to merge with anybody, to do a joint venture. Their job was to find the best potential partners. And then eventually I would set up a sales office, so then I would hire local salespeople, and we'd start to actually hit the market, okay? And then it gets down to acquisitions or joint ventures. So now these people that were in country trying to find my best partners, now I listen to them and I decide whether I'm actually going to buy somebody or whether I'm going to do a joint venture. How important do you think that step is there, the one in the middle of the chart, where you decide to buy somebody or you decide to merge with somebody? Critical. Why is it critical?
Because it's easier to buy a company established in the market.
Okay, so he's saying, why am I buying that company? He says established in the market. What does that mean? Why am I buying it? Why am I spending it?
It has customers.
Yeah, he already has customers. He already understands the culture. Now, don't forget, it's going to cost me a lot more money than setting up my own operation. As an example, when I went into Korea, it was such a booming market at that point, I wanted to do it on my own, but my partner was LG, Lucky Gold Star, right? Now, it's not easy to do that. I wonder if any of you have ever done business with the Koreans. They're not easy people to do business with, okay? It's very, very tough for business. But we went into business with Lucky Gold Star because they were one of the 4 largest companies in the whole country. And they made it very clear that if I was going to go into business with them, that I was not going to set up my own sales office in Seoul, Korea. There were other places where I did that, where we had a joint venture partner and I had my own sales office, but they didn't want to hear that at all. So that's the most important part of it. It's going to take you a lot of money, but what's it going to save you in the end if you joint venture with somebody? Time. What's time?
Money.
Time is money in the market, right? You hear that all the time. So you're going to shorten the window that you get into the market, but you're going to spend more money. Okay? Well, then eventually we'd have fully staffed operations. We'd go to regional offices around the world. If you were setting up a company and you now decided you're breaking up in the world into regions, what regions would you have of the world? Okay, you've gone into a few individual countries. Now you're going to take a step back, and you say now you're going to break the world up in the way you're going to operate. Most Fortune 500 companies are based this way. What would be a region? Europe, okay.
Middle East, Asia.
That would be one. But how is most companies are looking at Europe today? Huh?
Asia.
Well, Western or Eastern, that's the way I used to look at it, but you wouldn't look at it today, would you? How would you look at it? EU and non-EU, rest of Europe, right? So you'd probably have a breakdown. How many countries in the EU now? 28? I saw numbers at 28, is that right? 28? I should ask you the question, should it be 28? Huh? That's another question, huh? I don't think it should be, but anyway, it's 28. So it would be EU and non-EU. What would be the second region?
Middle East.
Huh?
Middle East. Or North
Okay, well, interesting. Middle East. Is Middle East generally big enough to be a region on its own? No.
That's why it's combined with Africa.
Yeah, so it's combined with Africa, right? Well, Africa's a whole other thing, right? It's 1 billion people, but it's a complete black hole right now. I don't mean black hole, I don't mean to say it's a black hole because it's black. It's just that it's a black hole because everybody's losing money in Africa, except the Chinese. But anyway, that would be one reason, because the Chinese are the only ones who figured out how to do business there. It's so corrupt, no one else can work there. But anyway, so Middle East and Africa. Okay, what would be another region?
North America.
Okay, so North America, and what does that involve?
US and Canada
And-
Mexico and West.
And Mexico, because it's a free trade agreement between the three. Okay, what would be the four?
Asia.
Asia's, of course, is extremely large. I picked, when I had a chance to go anywhere in the world, I mean, I can tell you that story, but originally I was in charge of the whole world. No, really, they didn't have an international division, so when I got promoted, they say your new title is, Vice President of all international, right? So my mother was really happy, and my wife. I said I could be king of the world, right? But to be honest with you, very frank with you, I studied it, and I went back to the chairman of AT&T and said I can't do it. I cannot sell to the world. It's absolutely impossible. It's too big. It's too diverse, and so we did this kind of an exercise, and then I was allowed to pick one of the regions. And why did I pick Asia? Why would you pick Asia? Even today,
The
The
most
most
innovation.
undeveloped market.
the most undeveloped and developing market, the largest group of the countries. I mean, yeah.
And the most innovations in the nowadays
And the
world
pollution is
because
cheap.
of
Yeah, well, if you're selling pollution products, it's probably the best market in the world, because the whole market is getting smoked out. But yeah, but it's the growingest market, huh?
The biggest population. of course.
Biggest population, you got a third of the world living right over there in Asia, right? Just in almost 2 countries, you got.
of course, low-paid workforce.
Yeah, but that's getting different. You're from Vietnam, right? Yeah, because Vietnam is really doing well these days, right? Because you guys are taking over the market for some of the Chinese manufacturers. I mean, last year, I'm sure you know this, but last year, the manufacturing rate at average Chinese factories rose 34% in 1 year. 34%. And that means countries like Vietnam, Burma, Cambodia, and Thailand before, they can take that business away. India, by the way, is trying to figure out how they're going to do that, but they haven't been able. Okay, so we got Europe, Middle East, we've got, we've got Middle East, and then we've got North America, Asia. What else is left here?
England and
Latin America. Yeah. So Latin and you could call it in cattle, we called it Central America, okay? So everything except, well, of course, Brazil is in there and they speak Portuguese, okay? So anyway, you go through this process and now you're breaking up the whole world, right, and how you're going to sell. Okay. All right. And so at the end of the story, then we decide to move profit out to all those regions, okay? Now, this is, I'll be very frank with you. I was in business 30 years. I never knew the real profit that I was selling until the last 5 years of my career. Never. Why do you think? Why don't businesses really know the real profit?
It's hard to measure.
It's hard to measure, and the bigger the company, the harder it is to measure. You have to have what's called an activity-based costing system, right? Where every piece of everybody's business, you know what we did? I'm talking one of the biggest companies in the world. When we talked about profit, we only talked about a few things. We talked about R&D costs. We knew that. We get that from the laboratories. We had our research costs. We knew manufacturing costs. Our plant managers, our manufacturing people were the best people as far as understanding costs.
Labor costs.
Yeah, we had all the labor, and we knew all the sales cost of what it cost us to run, sales and marketing and all the sales forces. Okay. To be honest with you, that's what we took, right? What did we miss? I mean, there's a lot of things we miss, but what other things do you miss? If we just take R&D, manufacturing, and sales.
The subjective with clients, because
I'm talking about costs. What cost would you miss in the business if you just capture that cost? What other cost is gone?
Transportation. I don't know if you mentioned that.
What is it?
Transportation.
Okay.
Operational expenses.
Huh?
Taxes.
Operational cost,
Yes.
administrative costs, legal costs, all that kind of stuff, right?
Unexpected expenses maybe.
Yeah. So, but we knew we could capture these, and this captured most of the costs in the business. So then we were okay with that. That's what we actually looked at as far as profit. Okay. All right. So anyway, on that chart, we've taken your business from a representative office all the way around the world. The other part of this, I've got 15 minutes yet. I'm going back my timekeeper. I have 15 minutes yet? Yeah?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. 50
Thank
minutes.
you. Okay. Thanks, sir. Only a couple more slides. We would also, I'm not going to spend a lot of time, from the human resources standpoint, our job, if we came into your country and we were going to set up the business, within 5 years, we want to be gone with all the Americans. That right away, we have the American managers out of here. They'd all be local people that we would be hired. Generally, we would get to 85% of the people would be all local within 5 years. The senior manager wouldn't be American anymore. The people that we sent overseas to work were very entrepreneurial, right? Because they were working overseas. Where's their boss? We're opening up 20 countries. We send people around to those countries. Where's their boss?
Far away.
Far away. That's a good thing, right? That's why I spent almost 20 years of my career living overseas, right? Because my boss was never there, right? So it was a good deal. But eventually we bring them all home and then we hire all the local people. Now, one of the things that I thought I would finish with, and I'm just going to show you some examples of some entrepreneurs that put their business together. These are 6 things that after 25 years of doing this business that I found were mistakes that we made in the beginning and would have made our business better if we would have fixed them up early. It may not be your 6 things, but they were my 6 things. The first one, sales and technical support. Most of you in this room are technologists. Everything that my salesman sold was technology. It was fiber optics. It was repeaters. It was microwave stations. It was cellular systems. It was switching machines. Okay. The minute the salesman sells the contract, who's the next person in the door? You guys, the technologists, right? We would always have to bring them in from overseas, from our laboratories, from our factories. And so the mistake we made is that if you gave me $100,000 and I could hire a salesman in Hong Kong, as an example, for $50,000, I would hire 2 salesmen. If you gave me $200,000, I'd hire 4 salesmen. It's called feet on the street. More people out there, and of course it was the wrong solution. What I should have been hiring was 1 salesman and one of you guys, a technologist that would have been a team to go out there, okay? And that was the mistake we made. Until we began to bring technologists and business people together in a team, and that's the way we hired them, we were not so successful. At my university, the most successful program right now is called IBE. IBE. It stands for Integrated Business and Engineering. It's a 5-year program, and you get a dual degree. You have to pick a engineering degree, industrial engineering, computer science. You also have to pick a business degree, finance or accounting. You study there 5 years, you come out with 2 degrees, right? Every one of those students is hired before the end of their junior year. What is the business saying?
Excellent.
They want people who have the mind of a technologist but can think like a business person, or vice versa, can think like business but have the smarts of a technologist.
Yes. And you can pay 1 person.
And they can pay 1 person, where in my example I had to pay 2. And now we have a program called Integrated Product Design. So before the students get through their junior year, they're on a team with design people from the design division over in the Arts and Science College, and they work with business people and engineering people. And the 3 disciplines do teamwork for companies, integrated product design. That's what the market is saying that they want. The second thing, installation. After we sold all these systems, technical systems, you have to have somebody that installs them, right? Our philosophy was we always paid the least amount of money for the installation guys. They were usually contract people, contract installation forces. The biggest mistake we made, because what's the best equipment in the world installed in the wrong way? A bunch of crap. It doesn't matter how good the technology was. If the last people touching it didn't do their job, it's not worth anything in the market. The same with computer systems. So now, the installation people are all part of our own group. They're the best trained people that we have. Bid and proposal. Well, this thing here could be a bid, right? What's a bid or a tender or a proposal?
Group of people say what amount of money are they willing to pay for that.
Right, so it's your offer to the company, and a group of people have to come together to put it together.
The one who says the best offer wins that item.
Wins, right. So if you're answering an international tender, if you answer an international tender for any kind of equipment, you put the tender in, how much do they talk to you after the tender goes in? You're answering a tender with, say, 5 or 6 other companies. It's a bid. Do they talk to you?
No.
No, they don't at all. All they do is read your bid, right? My point is that we used to give these to the salesman to do. My point to you, probably this is the most important point in the slide, is that this is a professional job. I don't care how small your business is or how big it is. Whoever is doing the bids, the proposals, it's a professional job. Usually the first part of a bid, what's usually the first part of it? Any of you ever written a business plan?
Yes.
Business plan? What's usually the first page of a business plan? It's not the index. It's the executive summary. Why do they call it the executive summary?
Because it sums up all
The
the main points of
The main points of the bid. Who reads the executive summary? The executives. They're too stupid to read the whole bid, right? Come on. They don't flip through and look at all the pricey, they look at the executive summary, then they go to the last page. What's the last page? The cost. The finances, right? It always is. It's the last thing that goes in the bid, right? If you don't have a professional team doing that, you got an executive summary, you've got a content, you've got the inside with all your sheets on your technology, you've got all your pricing sheets, then you've got the final price. This is not easy to put together, especially for international tenders. And if you do it in a haphazard way, it looks like crap. And when they come and they get it, you're being compared with 5 or 6, 7, 10 other companies. The only thing they've got in their hand is this, right? So my point to you is this is a professional job. Whoever does this, we used to have a team, that's all they did, were bids like this, okay? It's probably the most important thing we did to change our business. Protocol. What's international? What's protocol?
The law in some country.
Yeah, the culture.
The way you interact with your
Yeah, the culture and the way you interact with people, right?
Cooperation convention of that region.
Right. And you all have your different cultures.
Yes.
We were in 71 countries. The point I'm making is that we would go into these countries, how you greet people in meetings, how you eat with them. I mean, I still to this day, I carry all my business cards around in a case, a platinum case. Why do I?
Different languages.
Right, well, no, yeah, I did, but when I was in Asia, but why do I carry them in a case? If I go to China, my friend from Vietnam knows this, right? If I go to China, or I go to Japan, and I go to present this card, right? Do I just hand it to him? No, how do I give it to him? Right, I'm going to present it to him. I'm going to bow, here's my card, okay? And he's going to take it back, and what do I expect him to do? To look at it and study it. Right, feel it, know it, okay, no. Because in the Asian culture, this is who you are. You can keep it, okay, it's free. No. The card is who you are. It embodies you. You can learn a lot by it. You know what building they're in, you know what their title is. And it's considered to be respectful because it is who you are in business, right? And you should know these things. The first time I arrived at my office in Tokyo, Japan, my first customer in Tokyo, at the end of the meeting, what did he give me? After we're all done, we had dinner together, he gives me a gift, right? Now, when somebody, my protocol officer told me, I still have that gift, that my Japanese customer gave me 2 dolls, right? They were cute, I gave them to my wife, but they were hand-carved Japanese dolls, they cost $500. I was going to give them, one of my AT&T wood pens. It cost $20, right? They're going to throw me out of the room, right? So unless I know that, and I used to work in Ireland, so I bought $500 bowl from Waterford Crystal in Ireland. So I knew this in advance because my protocol officer told me when the Japanese gave me $500 worth of dolls, I'd give them $500 worth of crystal. And I haven't offended them, right? It means I'm smart enough to know what's going to happen in the meeting. So you need protocol officers to help you. I'll tell you a story. I'm down to my last 5 minutes, but anyway. I was in Chicago. We invited our Korean clients into Chicago, and we were going to sign a big deal with the head of the Korean LG company, and we brought the chairman in. We thought it would be nice to put the Korean flag on top of our headquarters building in Chicago. We didn't have a protocol officer there, so we have a cabinet of all the flags of the world, right? So the Koreans arrived, and we're all outside the headquarters, and we're all bowing to each other, and we went like this. And the flag on top of our building was the Chinese flag.
Oh.
Yeah. Somebody saw it was red, he thought it was pretty good. Anyway, they put the Chinese flag on top of the building, and the Koreans, they bowed to us, and they got in the car, and where did they go? They went back home to Korea, because we had offended them greatly that we didn't know the difference between the Chinese flag and the Korean flag. We got much smarter than that. But I'm telling you, a protocol officer is really important. Last but not least, strategy and market development. All of our strategy people, the kind of people that made decisions on which companies we buy, they all used to work back at headquarters. Now we move them out into the field because that's where they belong. So those 6 things, combining engineering and business, having the best installation people, making sure a professional does your bid, whoever that is, does it as a professional job. The country desk, I didn't mention that. We were working in 70 countries, so if I'm in Hong Kong and I'm having a meeting at 12 o'clock noon in Hong Kong, and I call back to the United States, what time is it?
I think it's 6 hours difference.
Well,
that's for Europe.
That's for Europe, right? So if it's in Hong Kong, it's 12 hours. So it's midnight here. If I'm in New York with our office in New York and I call Spain, right, now it's 6 hours, right? So if I get in and I have a cup of coffee, it's 9 o'clock, and I call the Spanish guys, it's what, 3 o'clock in Madrid. Where are the Spanish guys? Or home, right? Or they're at lunch. There's certainly nobody in the office at 3 o'clock, right? So what we did is every one of our offices was matched with an office in the States that worked the same time frame. So there was an Asian office that worked 12 hours different, so when the people called in from Asia, we had Chinese, we had Thai, because we were in Thailand also. We had people speaking the same language. So those are the things you have to think about if you're going to do that kind of business. Let me just finish then. I just wanted to show you some of the examples of how young entrepreneurs have created businesses. These are all people that came to my program. Argentinian guy has a water company. I asked him why he was in the water business in Buenos Aires. He said, the government's so corrupt, it's the only thing they can't force me to do is they can't control the water, so I can still get water. So he has a bottled water company. There's a guy by the name of Giuliano Lopresti, who's one of my entrepreneurs from Mexico City. His parents were in the trucking business. He didn't want to be in the trucking business. He went to Buenos Aires with his friend who has another business there. They bought they actually contracted with a small leather factory that was going out of business. They were losing their business with the Italians. And they started making leather purses, very quality purses. They're now in 7 shopping centers. But along the way, he got interested in Argentinian food, so he started Argentinian restaurants. He's now got 6 of the most successful restaurants in Mexico City. He does 20,000 people a month in those restaurants, right? Because he put those restaurants, he's also worked in the government, so he knows where the government guys are going to build the big government offices, and that's where he puts his restaurants. So he also now is importing wine. He also married a girl from Argentina because he spent so much time in Argentina. He married an Argentinian woman. And he now has the largest wine import business in Mexico. The Italian guy is a guy by the name of Bruno, and he made generators in the south of Italy, had a small generating plant, got bigger. He hooked up with 2 of my people from the Middle East, and now he has the largest distribution out of Italy of generators in the Middle East. Italian entrepreneur, was in the south of Italy, was in the food business. We sent him to San Francisco to work on a project for us in San Francisco. As part of the program, he got connected with San Francisco food providers. He's now moved to San Francisco, and he represents a big Italian food company in San Francisco. There's a young lady, worked for me. She was from Montreal. She came into my program. She was the head of a big restaurant at a hotel in Montreal. She met an entrepreneur in my program who is the youngest #1 entrepreneur 2 years in a row in Singapore, a guy by the name of Douglas Fu. He now has 62 restaurants, happen to be Japanese sushi restaurants, on conveyor belts. I'm sure you've seen some of these. I hadn't seen them before, but all the Japanese food, he has robotics in the kitchen. Huh?
Running sushi.
Right, and it's also very reasonable cost. And it comes out of the factory, you just call on touch screens, you call up the food, and it comes out with a flag, and it comes all around the restaurant, and you pull your food off. He's become very successful. Well, the Canadian girl went out to Singapore to learn his business, and then she fell in love with a Russian that was in my program. Again, another guy in my program. By the way, my program has had 22 weddings. So we're bringing people together from all over the world. Not quite the way I thought, but anyway. So anyway, she married the Russian, and he sent her into Russia to open up his restaurants in Russia. He's a Russian lawyer. We had an entrepreneur from a company called iMotion, which is into interactive software involving packaging with the eyes. His company grew in Denmark, but it was too costly, so he went to India with another one of my graduates, and now his software group is in Bangalore, but the technology group is in Denmark, and he has a major office in New York City, quite successful. The last one is interesting. 2 years ago, I had a guy from Singapore. He was an investment banker. A guy from Chile. His parents were in the wine business. A guy from Israel. He was a software developer for cellular systems. And the fourth one was an Australian, and he was in the travel business. He took trips to Vietnam, Cambodia, Malaysia, okay? So we've got investment banking, wine, telecom, and Australian travel. But these four guys really got along really well. So they went to Singapore, created a small holding company. And they were only, not one of them was 30 years old. They created a small holding company, and they started investing their own money and their own expertise in each other's business to see which business might go ahead first. And what actually happened was the Israeli guy came to Chile because the Chilean guy's parents were in the wine business. They knew everybody. They introduced them to the big technology companies, and they sold a major software system in Santiago, Chile. And so that became the first major business. So here's four people, four different countries, four different businesses working together to create business around the world. And that's what you can do. You can actually do that. You don't have to be corporate companies with a lot of big money in order to do this kind of stuff. Okay? All right? I'm on time.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Thank you very much. So enjoyed it.
Thank you.